So I cannot believe it is already the 15th of November. This is ridiculous. Or is it? We might get on to discussing times and dates later. But I am here with two of my favorite ladies. So we have got the wonderful Brice from Esoteric Atlanta. And we have got the amazing Medyhne from all the way from Australia. So we've got all different time zones in here. So because it's late at night in the UK, I'm afraid I do have my glass of wine because I'm chatting with my girlfriends tonight. So how are you both doing? Medyhne, how are you doing? Let's start with you. How are you and how are things in Australia?
Wow, it's been very interesting, I should say. That's a good word. I attended there was a gathering just actually literally half a mile from my house, called Reclaim the Line about 5 days ago, and got some lovely photos if you'd like me to share. But it was amazing. It was a real sense of unity and people coming together with the common cause and with sort of aligned energies, and it was very empowering. So that was really beautiful, and I think that gave people inspiration and motivation to keep foraging on, and we're going to do this. So that was very, very positive. And in terms of my own journey, well, it's been interesting. I'm continually working on evolving myself, through this whole process. So that's a real focus as well, because I think that in the midst of everything externally that's happening, we have to do the same amount of inner work to be able to manage the shifts and everything. And so even today I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to get onto that now. A new thing that I've got to focus on for my own well-being and self-evolution. So I'm trying to keep a balance of everything, a balance of working externally in the world, working with my clients, being able to participate and be an activist in the way that I can, and to be able to contribute positively, but while at the same time having the balance of keeping my own energy in a good space. So it's a constant juggling act, but we're getting there. I hope, fingers crossed. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I so resonate with all of that. What about you, Brice? Now, how is Atlanta and how are you?
I'm okay. I'm better today. I had a rough week last week. It's hard to be in this battle. And I am different than you ladies because I'm in a state here in the United States that's technically usually what we would call a red state. I mean, it got changed in the last competition. But anyway, we won't talk about that. But so things are here always are pretty relaxed because they won't past certain things. So as far as that's concerned, my day-to-day life, we're pretty comfortable, which is kind of a bad thing too, because in the practice of yoga, friction is necessary for change. So people aren't being motivated at this point to seek change.
However, here.
I know, right? Like that's one thing. Like sometimes friction is necessary. However, I have heard, I don't know if this is true or not, that in the United States, because of we have the good guys don't want us to be as active as other countries because they don't want it to escalate to something out of control. And so maybe that's why things are a little bit calmer. Now there are states here that are a different story, but most of the states here, I think it's pretty calm. I mean, we're right above Florida, which is basically like, they're kind of like, whatever, let's just keep living, so, and actually, Governor DeSantis was a teacher at my high school. So, but anyway, but yeah, for me personally, and I know, I'm sure you guys have both experienced it, when you start to step out of the realm of what's considered normal. And I've always been kind of on the fringe of normality anyway, especially from where I'm from in the world, because I've spent a lot of my adult life in India. We own a yoga shala. I'm not following the norm of being a part of the Junior Service League and being a member of the church and all that kind of stuff. So we've always kind of been on the fringe. But lately, I've been very much attacked spiritually because part of what I do on my channel is read through the missing books of the Bible, which I've never at all said, like, you have to believe this. It's more like, let's just see what these things say. you know, and I know Catherine and I were talking about how censorship works both ways. You know, you can't be a freedom fighter and still try to censor things you don't like. That's not being a freedom fighter, you know. So
I'm feeling that same energetic attack too, and I think a lot of light workers are, and the great thing about that is that when the dark come to try and impact us in that way, it actually propels our growth forward, and we actually achieve more success. And so it's this weird, quantum physics thing where they're pushing one way and they're trying to suppress and create difficulty, which, they're trying really hard to do for me at this particular moment. But at the same time, I'm getting great success in other areas. So they're propelling me forward in my success at the same time. And I think we can look at that globally as well, that, all the repression and the lockdowns and everything else that's happening with this and everything is actually totally propelling the light forward in such an accelerated way. So it's that push and pull thing, and so we can thank them for our success as well. So
I was having a chat earlier with a couple of people, and then Brice just before we came on, and it was really fascinating because from my point of view, rather than more attacks, I would say it's almost like being completely ignored and sort of shunned, as if what you say doesn't matter. So putting an example, I've got a group of friends that I was at uni with, and we're all biologists, and we're all looking at all a general chit chat situation. And one of the topics that came up was about the I'll say it, I think we're allowed to say global and then getting hotter. We're allowed to say that. Yeah, global warming. And of course, we've had the big environmental conference over in the UK, in Scotland. Well, supposedly we have. And the thing that's really hit home for me over the last couple of weeks that I'd like us to really discuss about is this whole thing. I mean, as Brice said, censorship works both ways. So on one side, we've got the people that think they're awake, that think that more people have to wake up to achieve the changes we want, to move the energetic vibration forward and create the new world and move into the age of Aquarius. And then we've got the people that don't think that at all and are quite happy with what's going on and think that any of us that haven't had this are ruining their lives and putting them in danger. And both sides are very much coming at loggerheads. And if we take the global warming situation, we've got people that believe that is the next agenda after the these codes. It's like playing charades, everyone, isn't it? Luckily, I'm not going like that. But we've got the people we've been saying for a year and a half now that what they're going to do is once they've got to a certain stage with they're going to talk about the global warming and bring that in. And then you've got the people who say it's all a load of rubbish, but it's never that black or white, is it? These situations. So I think I'd love to hear what you think, ladies, about this, because both sides are almost like it's this or it's this, but we all know there's loads of shades of grey. We won't get into 50 Shades of Grey, but in between. So
yes,
what do you think?
I just think the hallmark of a civilized, mature society is to be able to honor one another's differences, and just to be able to hear what somebody says and not be triggered emotionally, and to be able to stay neutral and like an observer, an objective observer who honors the other person. If it doesn't harm or hurt us, then we need to practice that. It's like this level of spiritual mastery that we need to really be practicing at the moment. And there are so many triggers out there. So it's a perfect time to practice this technique. And, that is really just what's going to reveal where we're at as a society, as a civilization, how we are able to accept other opinions that are different to our own. That's my opinion.
That's the highest level of yoga. That's the whole point of yoga, is being able to be just an observer, even of yourself. And we, one of my favorite quotes is an Aristotle's quote that says, it's a sign of an intelligent mind when you can entertain an idea without accepting it. We've lost that ability to be able to hear what someone's saying, entertain that. We don't have to accept it as our reality, but still entertain it and understand it. And, you know, it goes back to this, and this has come up a lot in the missing books of the Bible and things in yoga, all this idea of the original Christians, the Nazarenes, were more mystical in the sense that they were the Gnostics. It was an inner knowing versus idio, or outer. And when you're pointing the finger at somebody else and saying it's your fault, you've got three more fingers pointing back at you. And both sides are doing that to each other. And so for both sides, it's a chance to go within. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Like, we can't get off this planet. We don't know. I'm sure we could if we knew how, but we don't know how to get off this planet. So we're all stuck here. We all, you know, they say that Earth, as a third density planet, is one of the hardest planets to go through third density in. So we literally, our souls literally picked like the creme de la creme of planet universities to learn these lessons in. You know, and so you can kind of pat yourself on the back. I mean, I guess you're that strong where the universe is like, fine, you can go here now. You can deal with that shit.
So I think it's about breaking that cycle, like you're talking about, because somebody's got to break that cycle of the blame and the judgment and the pointing the finger, and someone's got to stand up in terms of their integrity and their soul mastery to break the cycle of that circle that continues and continues. And when one person stands up and breaks the cycle, then we can shift this. So, you know, I'm encouraging everyone to stand up and break the cycle.
So do you want to use a practical example of this, ladies, just before we move on? So look, because this is really, really important, I think, for us to sort of have a real open discussion about, because there's so much passion involved in this. So if we take little people, young people, and this, okay, so if we take that as an example, so I was having a chat with Jean-Claude earlier, and I was saying, when I had my children, I was really grateful for other parents that brought to my attention things that perhaps I might want to do a bit more research on before making a decision. And I was really grateful about that, because when I first had my son, you know, there's a lot on your plate and no one gives you a manual about how to do this. So it's a very steep learning curve. So when someone brought this to my attention, I was really, really grateful, because it allowed me to do some research and make a conscious decision on which way we wanted to go with that, rather than just make an unconscious choice. So if we take what's happening currently at the moment, and we take this scenario about non-judgment and doing it, where do you feel the lines drawn about if you've got this situation of the little people and the this, and about helping people understand that they might want to look further before making a decision?
That is a hard question.
I'm really genuinely intrigued by this.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing with children, it's the number one topic where we get really, really passionate about it, because everyone is very compassionate about children, and we care about them so deeply that's the number one trigger, isn't it, really? But I'll handball to you, Brice.
Well, I'm thinking about, and this is what, you know, my boyfriend's really good at being calm. He's a Cassiopean, as we learned on Tuesday night with Jean-Claude. And he always says, like, regarding, and I was just thinking about a thing with my sister, but I'll leave with this thing. You know, in our yoga shala, we don't ask anybody. We don't have this there. It's just normal. And people that get this, we just don't talk about it, because we don't want to scare them by giving them our viewpoint. We just want to let them be, you know, that they're on their journey. They've made their decision. If we can, if they want us to respect our decision, we have to respect their decision as well. It's kind of his viewpoint. Well, my sister has 3 children now, but when they had a pandemic baby, but her 2 oldest ones, when this all started, that's when my sister really started to kind of figure things out. She started seeking more knowledge, and her oldest 2 had Olive when they were babies. But when all this kind of started, and my nephew, her oldest son, his best friend, he is 9 now, so he was like 7, 8 when this all started. His best friend's mother called my sister freaking out about them when they were going to go back to school. And my sister was on the phone with her, and it dawned on her she told me later that this woman is really afraid, like genuinely afraid. You know, here my sister is done all this research. Of course, she's my sister, so she hears me talk about it all the time. And she's not afraid. You know, she's not afraid for her kids. Like, you know, but this woman, she was like, I all of a sudden felt so much empathy for her. And it gave me, my sister was like, it gave me such a new perspective that these people are really terrified for their children. And so when we look at it that way and we think, oh, that's, you know, ABUSC to do this, but if you look at it that way, that these parents, I mean, I'm not a parent, I'm a dog parent. But I know with my two nieces and my nephew, that I would do anything for those children. Like the first time I held my nephew, even as his aunt, I knew that was a love I'd never felt before, that I would literally give my life for this baby. Like there was nothing that he could do that would ever not make me love him. And so I think about that with other parents that are doing this and they're freaking out and they're with their kids. And it's like my sister hit the nail on the head. Like you have to come out at this with compassion. Because most of these people, yeah, there are the few annoying ones that just want to like control other people. We get that. But there are people like that on our side as well, that just have this need to control their people. But for the most part, I think a lot of parents with children, they're so fearful for their children's health. They think they're doing the right thing. And I feel like any act done in love can't be judged as harshly. And I do believe, as harsh as this may sound, I do believe that every person, I know Janine talks about, that does have a soul contract. And if you are supposed to be here, if you're meant to be here for a certain amount of time, even through this transition with you're still going to be here, you know? And so at the end of the day, it's like, there's already a dharma, there's already a path for every single person. And in our mortal lives, in our lives of nature and Prakriti, we think so linearly, like we're going to be born, we're going to live, and then it's going to be over. But if you step back for a minute and think in terms of the soul, of the eternal, it's never ending. It's never ending.
Yes.
And
it's a free will universe. So, you know, everyone makes their choice according to their level of consciousness. And so we need to also honor their choice from that position, because everyone has chosen at this point, you know, that we've all had time to make free will choices and to learn about things and have the information. So at this time, it's like a turning point where people are really making aware to the masses what their consciousness is. You know, it's all being revealed and unhidden. And so therefore we are also being encouraged to be able to see other people's consciousness and then not judge it.
Yeah.
And this the issue of this that Catherine uses, this that is making everything so obvious, and it's like the marker that we can that where everything is revealed now, where before you know, you think that people would potentially have reacted in, you know, certain ways or different ways to this, and then you see how they react and it's very different to what you thought. So the consciousness thing has surprised, I think, everyone, because everyone is at a different point, but nobody is better than anyone else. We're all equal, and we're other people where we were previously as well. So it's not about judging people when they're at different positions. And like you say, choices, most people make choices based on you know, benevolent intentions. They're not, you know, malevolent. There's only a very small percentage of people in the world that have that agenda. So, you know, we just need to recognize that if people make those choices, they're generally making them because they think that's the best choice they can make at that time with the knowledge that they have, and not to judge it. So, and if they do make those choices based on fear, then again, it's not for us to judge their fear. And love is the thing that dissipates fear. So sending them love, and if we're reacting in some sort of way, forgiveness, you know, for example, the Ho'oponopono prayer is a great prayer to do, to give forgiveness to others and forgiveness to self for judging others. So, you know, I think if we get triggered, we need to take responsibility for that and work on that.
Couple of things I just want to add to that, because they're all really, really good points, and it's interesting. So I've got a really good friend that I used to work with whose eldest child is the same age as mine, and they were damaged by one of these, and they've never got over the fact that no one warned them and no one said, and they've never got over the fact that some of their friends chose not to have these for their children and didn't ever have the discussion with them. So that's one point. The other point I wanted to raise is when we talk about, yes, we've got the soul contracts, I find it really fascinating. I do agree with that, and that's definitely my belief system, but I also agree that we were put in the human body with free will, and that therefore you do make choices along this journey, which will then affect your later reincarnations. And I do question how much free will certain children have. So putting it just as a scenario, you know, I've got a couple of members of the family that are mechanics. And if my car was on the drive and they were around for Sunday dinner, and when they were driving off, they noticed there was some brake fluid leaking from under my car, I would expect them as a mechanic to say, Catherine, get your car checked before you drive it. I think there might be leaky brake fluid, which means your brakes might not work, which means that would be very dangerous. And I'm not a mechanic, and I wouldn't have a clue. If there was liquid dripping from under my car, quite frankly, I'd probably just think it was condensation or something. I certainly wouldn't know where it was coming from and what the implications are. But my two relatives that are mechanics would have a lot more better idea than me. And I would be pretty horrified if they drove off and saw that and didn't say anything.
I hear you. And you know, I personally feel like I'm doing everything I can to share what I know whenever I can. And I do it at every opportunity that I can if I feel people are open, and even just dropping little amounts if I feel people are open to that and not open to anything more. So I personally feel like I'm very much activating that, and I've actually done it on a bigger level too, and got a lot of you know, flack for that as well, but which isn't really ideal, I guess. But I think everyone is in, if they're aware of what's happening, that they're trying to be able to inform to the best of their ability. And you know, when you get people that are reacting to that, I guess you've just got to step back and stop. But if people are open, I mean, I know I'm trying to do everything I can in that way, because I totally agree with you. You know, people need the information and they're not getting it from the mainstream sources. And so somehow we've got to be able to give them the information in other ways. And usually it's through, you know, family and friends and community of things that they hear, because apart from the mainstream, if they're into that, there's no other way they're getting their information.
You know, it's interesting. I have in my family, one of my family members is a pathologist, and he is one of us, I guess. He's very aware of, he and his wife are very aware of everything. He has refused this. I don't know what's going to happen with his job, but he has 3 children around my age, and they've all rejected the information he knows. He's tried to talk to them about the dangers of but they're choosing to believe the television instead of their own father who went to medical school. And sometimes I think, and Cindy brought this up in one of our round tables, Catherine, human beings want to belong.
Yeah.
They want to feel like they're loved. And they're so afraid of losing their place within their community that I think sometimes that, again, that goes back to fear or pride or ego, will override logical thought just so they can fit in with their peer group, you know, or they can be accepted by society.
And there's been subliminal, you know, messaging and programming coming through as well, which is so on the subconscious, unconscious levels, they're being also highly indoctrinated through that as well. So you're getting it from different angles.
Yeah, I'll tell you when, so I am the only female in the state of Georgia who is authorized to teach Ashtanga yoga from the Shala in India. It took me many, many years of going back and forth to India. I've fractured bones. It's an intense practice. Worked really hard to get this. And I've been very successful, and I teach packed out courses now. I'm very grateful to all of my students. And it's a very small community of people globally. And a lot, as you were saying, Catherine, about your colleagues, a lot of my colleagues in the yoga world are still, part of yoga is seeing the truth through the illusion, but they're still buying the illusion, which makes me think, what have you been doing all this years? You obviously just gymnastics, because obviously you're not seeing the truth. But when some people in the community found out that I was a Mr. T supporter, they threatened me that they were going to turn me into my teacher in India and try to have my authorization taken away from me, just because of who I was going to be supporting in the competition here in America, which had everything to do with what we have been learning these past few years. Really, that was the best candidate to continue the awakening process of us and clearing things out. And, that was our logical. And I was so upset when I got those threats. And of course, nothing happened. Nobody took my offer. That's not going to happen. But that threat, that fear, and I think, things on the other side have they've gotten extreme on both sides. Yeah. Let's be honest. We're moving so far away from being in the middle that there is, but the far side over here, it's that ostracizing. If there's one thing, and it's so funny because, I come from a family, both sides of my family are big in the Republican Party here in the United States, but two of my mom's sisters married men who were Democrats. And their marriages lasted until one of them passed away. They had beautiful, healthy marriages. And it was all just kind of funny at election time. It was always like, oh, they would tease each other. It was never that big of a deal. But all of a sudden, these issues have become really big deals. And that might be because of the underlying battle that's happening spiritually as well. That might be part of it, or the fact that we're moving into a new timeline. I don't know. But things have gotten so extreme that it takes you, and we might be patting ourselves on the back here, but it takes a strong person to be able to stand up against the mainstream. And a lot of people are not ready for that. They're not ready to have that courage, to go.
Well, we consider that there's been thousands of years of engineering and manipulation to create division between all different groups in humanity. And so it's such an ingrained subconscious mindset of how to actually interact in the world that it's hard for people to function in different ways where they're not utilizing those same, templates. Mm-hmm. that have been completely engineered and manipulated by the controllers to keep us completely disempowered and controllable. So yeah, it's I think there's a lot of subconscious patterning going on there. That's also what we're needing to overcome.
Yeah. What did John Claus say once? We make really bad slaves.
Yeah, exactly. I know, a terrible. I'm not a good slave at all. Yeah.
Me neither.
Hang on a minute. You want me to do what? But I remember Wayne Dyer saying, and I love some of Wayne Dyer's quotes, it's like people spend their whole life looking for something to be offended by. And I can see that in human behavior a lot. And I can see how it's programmed into people, because immediate reactions of people is almost a no but. And instead of looking when you're interacting with someone to sort of say, how can I connect with the things that we resonate on and we connect with, people are taught through schooling, through social media, through subconscious things, to see what can they find that offends them, what can they find that differentiates them. And that
boils down to self-love too, doesn't it, Catherine?
Absolutely. And when you're really, confident in yourself, and you just don't, the thing is, you just don't see this in other species, because what they've done is I think as humans, because speech, there's no other species in the whole of the planet that uses speech as their dominant way of communicating. And therefore, it's a standing joke. We've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, but it says I was talking a lot, but we just don't use that. We just don't communicate. We're not picking up on the sensitivities. I've got some friends, love them to bits, but my God, they cannot pick up on body language at all. And they just miss every single sign. So if you've got two dogs, like Brice and I have both got rescue dogs, street dogs from different areas of the world. But when you find animals that have lived wild, I've got a cat, two dogs, and a horse, all of which have lived wild. And you can only survive when you are very sensitive to the energies around you, because if you misread that body language, that could escalate into a fight that could end your life or injure you. And bear in mind, if you're in the wild, it will get infected, you know, etc., and you're going to die probably. But because we don't listen or connect, well, some of us do, but as a human species, we use our words so much, it overrides all these other warning signals and senses. So when you get two dogs, when I see my Romanian dogs greeting other dogs, it's just beautiful to see, because they've got such a huge bubble and they can read the energy from such a long distance. And then I see domestic dogs that haven't had that sort of interaction, and they just rush straight in and miss all the warning signs. And it just reminds me about humans interacting, missing all those warning signs.
And that's going to be how we evolve too, isn't it? We're going to be ending up communicating telepathically, and there won't be the need for conversation. And that's just one of the ways that we're going to really grow as souls and evolve. And I think people that are tuned in are becoming much more telepathic now as well, and we're connecting much more on those levels, and our abilities and our gifts are growing and accelerating as this ascension is happening. And so we can see that happening for us, and so that's exciting. So yeah.
I know, Catherine, you said, I know I've said this to you before, but it was one of your episodes with Jean-Claude, I believe, where you talked about the tuning forks.
Yeah.
And how if one tuning fork are at a high vibration, it's going to pull the other one up. And I know, like, my boyfriend is big into the law of one. That's kind of how he lives his life by. And the whole thing about the law of one is that at this point on our timeline here on Earth as a third density planet, it's not just the human beings that are being harvested. I've said this before. I hate they use the word harvested because it sounds like a freaking horror movie, but harvesting as in moving up in your understanding, your consciousness, is also the Earth itself that is moving from third density to fourth density. And we're going from third dimension to fifth dimension. Now, if you're looking at densities, once the Earth, the planet itself, nature itself moves into that fourth density, it's no longer a planet of both positive and negative. It has to either be one or the other. And Earth is destined to be a fourth density positive planet. So we see this is seen in Revelations, in the Bible, the age of Aquarius. We see this everywhere in all sorts of different scriptures. But in the law of one, they talk about there are groups of people that have come back to the third density plane of existence that are actually fifth or sixth density beings. And these people are called the wanderers. And I think most of us who have channels, who are kind of the weirdos, like the witchy weirdo people out there that we've lived on the fringe, you know, we're over in India studying yoga and, you know, doing all of our natural stuff. I think most of us are those wanderers. Now, the thing is once you take third density body, you forget. You have that forgetfulness. And so that's the danger, because you do have free will. You can get trapped back into it. But I think most of us have remembered in some capacity. And we are talking about the tuning forks. It's like, instead of pointing the finger at other people, like, if you could only do this, if you could only do this, if you could only do this, if we just hold on to our vibration and continue to work on ourselves, it will automatically start to energize everyone else, all the sleepyheads, get them to slowly start to wake up. I mean, I think about this a lot. I know it's human nature to get frustrated with other people. I understand that it's human nature, but we're the lucky ones in the sense that we've been able to wake up slowly. You know, I cannot imagine some people I know that are just have no idea, and the stuff that they're going to have to find out, and the quickness and how traumatic that's going to be for them. I mean, we're the lucky ones. And so when we, in terms of like moving forward with this, it all comes down to self. It's working on yourself and not pointing the finger at other people. You know, does that make sense? You know,
Yes. expanding the heart chakra, working on the heart. You know, there's different techniques that you can work with. I have a beautiful one where you go in and you do like a spring cleaning of the heart chakra, and you clear it all out. It's like sort of emptying the rubbish bin. And you know, things like that really make a difference energetically, you know, that you can work on yourself, and you feel lighter, and you raise your consciousness and raise your vibration. And then when you interact again with someone else, they feel that, and then that shifts them forward. So, you know, it's you know, that 100th monkey syndrome too, that, you know, once so many people do it, then it just spreads around the world. I think you can't stress the importance of doing that inner work at the moment on self, and really raising the levels of self-love and self-care, because that's a model for others. It's funny because people have a misconception that we're here to serve others, and that makes you a good person and so forth. But when you're just constantly serving others, you get exhausted really quickly, you get completely drained, and it's not really a role model for other people, because they're looking at you serving others, but you're not necessarily honoring yourself. So when they see you loving yourself and honoring yourself, then that gives them permission to do the same. And then that's a far greater model. I think, you know, the Christ consciousness energy modeled that really well for people as well, you know, the Jesus Christ energy. So I think that if people give themselves permission and love themselves enough to be able to do the work now, it's going to mean everything.
And
Absolutely.
I think humility is a really important thing in the right sense of the word. So not in a degrading yourself sense of the word, but in terms of all of us, there's not going to be anyone that isn't going to have an opinion one day and then get new information in that might change their point of view. And that's ability to stay flexible. We talk about flexibility in nature, and it's the way of surviving. But in human language, you know, our words, we talk about guilt and being able to admit we're wrong and things like that. But I just think that language, to me, just is so negative, because people, like you've both said, make the best decisions they can with the information they've got at that time. And there's a reason why they're making those decisions at those times. And I can look back on loads of occasions in my life where I've made decisions now, where I look back now at the stage I'm at now and think, what was I thinking, you know? But at the time, I genuinely thought I was making the best decision, whether it was for my animals, whether it was for myself, or whatever. Sometimes I knew I wasn't making the right decision, and that was consciously wrong, but I enjoyed those occasions immensely. But
my past, I could say that about. So
yeah, I just think this blame culture, and this has to start from us. You're both so right what it has. We have to, if people can't sort of come back and question and say, well, what if this, if we're still going to have, I told you so. I mean, my personal belief at this moment in time is I don't feel we need anyone else to wake up, or wherever that might be. I don't know whether what truths will or won't be revealed.
Right. And we don't know everything.
I haven't got a clue, and I don't know. I'm just very pleased that I'm not the one having to make that decision. I'm quite happy to leave that to someone else, because I don't want to have to make that decision, because what a difficult decision to be, because there is no right or wrong answer. And I think when we sort of just concentrate on living our best lives we can at the moment, and not letting this external environment affect us as much as we can. I'm not saying it's easy. You know, for me, the thing that really gets me is my children, like you were saying about your relative. I mean, it's so hard. It doesn't matter what age your children are, they're still your babies, aren't they? So, and it doesn't matter whether they've got 2 legs or 4 legs, they're still your babies. So, but, you know, at the end of the day, they're their own individual people, and we don't own them. And there's loads of things I've done that I'm sure my parents wish I've made different decisions.
I mean, I think about I'm 38 now, and I look at there's some people out there on platforms that are in their 20s, and I think, oh man, how nice it would be to be that young and that awake. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's no way you could pay me to go back to my 20s. Like, there's no way you could pay me to do that decade again, because that was a shit show. But one bad decision after the other, and you learn from that. And that's the thing, a long time ago, I think I told you, Catherine, the word sin just meant to miss the mark. You just missed the mark. And if you look at like mistakes you made with, when you were young, or when you didn't have all the information, you thought you were making the right decision, or you knew you were, like I said, there's some boys I did that with. I knew I was making the wrong decision, but it was fun. But those mistakes they're not really mistakes if you can take something away from that, if you can grow and learn from that. It's like when you're a child and you like steal your sister's Halloween candy, and then your sister gets upset, and in the moment that was really awesome to have that candy, but then you see your sister upset and you feel bad, and you're like, I don't want to do that anymore because I don't like seeing her. You start to learn, even from little kids learn that. They start to pick up on boundaries even within themselves, and how to self-govern. And again, there is a huge difference between having a little bit of guilt versus having shame.
Yes.
And people have this where they get so shameful because they've done something wrong, which nobody gets out of this world alive. We're all going to mess up. Like, that's the whole point of being on a journey. And if you can take those bad times, those mess ups, and actually learn from them and become a better person because of it, then they weren't mess ups. They weren't that.
I also like to perhaps focus more on the now moment in my life. Like I tend not to look back too much, because I find that when I look back retrospectively, there tends to be more of a negative energy with that, or I don't buy into regret really, or any of those energies. And when I'm in the now moment, then that is your greatest joy. That's when you're completely present. So personally, I find that when I look back, often there tends to be like a sort of a bit of a negative feeling with that in some ways, because the past is it just has that energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can never recreate the person you were when you made those decisions. And I think that's the thing. It's like, if we're looking back into the past from our current mindset, but we weren't in that mindset when we were in the past. So it's all completely irrelevant and really made up. And I think, one of my, I've been thinking so much, the good old saying that you cannot solve the problems from the same energy that they're created against. And if we're trying to solve problems from a position of blame and anger, we're not going to get anywhere, and we're not. And yes, of course, we've made inroads, and there has been a lot of progress, and I feel very positive about where we're going. I mean, I've got no doubt at all in my mind that it's going to work out great in the end. But I'm sort of looking at it and I'm thinking almost like, God, there's all this banging ahead against a brick wall, and the anger and the frustration. And I get it completely, because believe me, I've been there. But it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So, I think we have to look at these different things. And at the end of the day, if we're in a happy place ourselves, a contented place ourselves, then people are going to be much more open to having a conversation about anything.
Well, there's techniques where you can take things that can be perceived as negative things, and then you actually bring them into your consciousness. You don't sort of suppress them or avoid them or ignore them, and you speak back to them like they're a person, and then you transform them into a positive thought. So you can actually do that with everything. So, for example, I had I think many years ago, where I had a little baby who passed at birth, and so I could even actually do that with that, believe it or not. It's one of the most difficult things you could potentially go through. Well, it certainly was, for me, extremely challenging. But, I actually was able to turn that experience into something where I recognized and acknowledged all the positive things that had come from it, in terms of my own growth, in terms of growth of people around me. And when you can transform everything into a positive, I think that is a great skill, to really work with. And the same with everything that's happening in the world at the moment. You can perceive it as, oh my goodness, this is so, dark and dystopian and whatever, or you can see it as an opportunity for the world to really grow and to learn and to kickstart this evolution that Brice was mentioning, where the world is globally the Mother Earth is choosing to ascend, and humanity is ascending with her. And it's the first time they've both ascended together simultaneously in any system of worlds. So it's incredibly auspicious and powerful, and we're here to experience that. So it's a great honor, you know, to be here. And
Todd says it all the time. He's like, this is the one time that apparently souls were like lining up to be able to be right. Yes. Because it's the one time the planet has ascended. Usually the humans have to leave the planet.
Yeah, that's right. And many wanted to come, and there were lines and lines and queues of them wanting to come in, and they were rejected because they were not considered to have the capabilities to be able to propel the transition forward in the way that was required. So only in some sense the master souls were allowed or given permission to be here at this time. And I say that to people, and they go, oh, what you know, I'm a master soul. You know, it takes a lot for people to really understand what that means, to know that on some level you're a master to be here at this time, and to really honor ourselves for that, and acknowledge our true greatness for being here.
That goes for everyone that's here, not just the people that have got the same beliefs as us. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, how would we get this learning? You always talk very rightly, Brice, about friction. And how would we get this learning and hone in our skills and look at different, you know, ways of trying to communicate, not just with humans, but with everything else on the planet, if we didn't have some sort of resistance and friction? You don't learn anything from an easy ride. You don't know that as adults. You just don't.
Even look at like the idea of Kundalini rising. Like I know that some people think that's bad because that side has made it bad, but the Kundalini is like inside of you, and you can't see it on an X-ray, so please don't go to your doctor and tell them your Kundalini is broken. It's not going to work. But we talk about in our practice that, you know, we get really hot. We have to get really hot and sweaty in our practice, and a part of that is to make that understanding uncomfortable. Like here in the Deep South, in the summertime here in the Deep South, we have a ceiling fan, air conditioning. It is so freaking hot down here that if you are just sweating in your sheets, even with both things going. And so people in the Deep South know what it's like to be hot and uncomfortable. Well, that's the thing about the friction created even within your own body to get that to rise through Sushumna, through the spine, is to make it uncomfortable enough where it has to take action. Mary Magdalene in her gospel, Cindy talks about this from Sacred Garden Yoga. Mary talks about the wisdom of the wrathful person. We think of wrathful. Oh, go ahead.
Another way of envisioning that is that wherever there is success, there's failure. So that's another way of viewing it. Yeah.
You gain wisdom over there has to be just enough friction and anger or whatever, or wrath, as you want to say, what Mary Magdalene said, not to go out and cause harm to people, but to be able to take a step back and say, something's got to shift. This can't continue. You know,
when you're happy and you're comfortable, it's just stay stagnant. Think, oh, why do anything? Why bother? Oh, I'm feeling good. I'm good.
This is great. This is awesome, man. Yeah, I'm just riding the wave. Well, and you talk about the master souls that we're all here, and I've been thinking about, because there are people in our community that kind of sometimes I get a little, because they get kind of pompous and they kind of talk down to the other side, and that kind of just makes me, but you know, the thing I want to say is, if we're master souls, then we need to act like master souls. A master teacher, my teachers in India would never be nasty to a beginner, to someone who doesn't understand.
Kindness. I just can't go past the word kindness. You know, that's the ultimate, to be kind to one another. And I love that North American Indian saying to tread gently on the earth as well. That's a lovely one too.
Yeah, they were wise.
Yeah, I you know, we talk about and we say, you know, that we absolutely about the new normal, but I don't ever want to go back to where we were before. We were at a place 2 years ago where the lack of respect for and I'm not talking about global warming agenda, I'm talking about the general lack of respect for all creatures, great and small, all life on the planet, to me wasn't at a level that I ever want to go back to. You know, factory farming, using animals, even a lot of people I've heard in the spiritual community who believe, and I'm sure this is a belief, but it's not mine, that animals are put on this world to serve humans. I'm just like, where on earth does that come to? So I'm so pleased we're at a stage now where we can reset everything, because you do get into these bad habits. It's a bit like during lockdown, a lot of people, probably not you, Brice, but the rest of us, put on weight because you changed your habits, and perhaps you then slipped into different things. And I think this is the thing, as humanity, we've slipped into a lot of bad habits with gradual changes and explaining away, like that's the only way we can feed the starving is to abuse animals in this way. And we now know that's completely rubbish. And so we've opened up a whole new chance to reset everything in a positive way. And I think that's so important.
I think that's a great point. And the fact that we had our eyes closed, like that we had blindfolds on to everything that was happening that was negative and that was hidden. It was like, oh, I can't see it, so it doesn't exist. It's not in front of my face, so it's not here. But all this, the P word with the children and the traffic thing, everything like that that's been happening, it has been, and subliminally we knew it, but we just had our blindfolds on, and because it was away from us and hidden, we didn't do anything about it. So you can't literally have all this stuff coming up now and just have no conscience in not wanting to get rid of it and to shift the planet. And I think the other thing with what you're saying, Catherine, is that we just were, in a sense, in denial with everything that was going on.
They kept us so busy.
That's the thing. I think that is the key to everything, and I will hold my hand up to that as well. In terms of when I look back at how I was living 10 years ago, you're so busy all the time. I didn't have the time to be, I really didn't, and now I've realized I can do it. So I love these conversations, ladies. I hope we can do another one. So for the people that might be in Austria at the moment, who've had some terrible announcements this week, Australia is not great, where we are in the UK is not great. So what would be, start with you, Medyhne, and then on to Brice, just to finish with a couple of words of wisdom for people that are going through these really challenging scenarios at the moment?
Sure. Well, I don't think you can underestimate the importance of humor right now and having a laugh. And I have this brilliant meme I want to share with you. It's really funny. So, we've got all these regulations where you can't do this and you can't do that, and you can only have a few people for this and a few people for that, but you can have, if you want to go to a sports event, sure, you can pack up the whole stadium, but forget, these personal family gatherings, forget about that. So this meme just was hysterical. I loved it.
Do I need to make sure you can share the screen? Are you going to put it on the screen?
Sure, I can do that. Yeah. Here it is.
Hang on, do I need to let you share?
So it goes.
Only 6 allowed at Christmas.
Only 6 allowed at Christmas, but 30 for a funeral. I will be holding a funeral for my pet turkey that sadly passed away on 25th of December. I love that.
Oh, can we do the same for a bit of broccoli? Please don't kill the turkey. Oh my God. This is be creative. That is brilliant creativity.
The thing about that humor, humor is something that we talk about a lot too. It's the one thing that's going to dissipate demons, as well as humor. And we even say, like, our dog Ravi, we just assumed that he didn't have hair on his chest, that was just his breed, because he's a street dog from India. But we started getting him on this green mush, this vitamin stuff, and he's grown all this hair. And so I've been like joking, like, Ravi, are you now identifying as a poodle?
Yes.
Identity, like, just are you a poodle now? Just laughing at that's such a great, and it's hard to do, and I know it's hard to do, and for people that are living in under these circumstances, like we are with you. Like we understand, and our heart goes out to you. But take a deep breath. Take it one breath.
So not to diminish the you know, the challenges of what's going on in Australia, but I just love that. That meme.
Laugh at it. Just do. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
And be creative and talk. So for me, this is my therapy. Talking to you ladies, talking to like-minded people, not having to have any answers, but just opening up these debates and seeing things from other different perspectives, because everyone's got a different perspective and they all need to be taken into account. So I just think, you know, humor, identify as a poodle, and and just find someone to talk to. And, you know, it doesn't matter if that's someone across the globe or anything. Brice, you and your friend, you are starting up a brilliant little health group, aren't you? Do you want to just quickly mention that?
And I will say, if you want to laugh, I mean, I'm an American. We're one of the leading powerful countries in the world. And look what we got for the president right now. He shot his pants at the Vatican. If you can't laugh, like, embarrassing, you know, like, but it's funny. I appreciate the actor, you know, the whole movie around that, because quite comical. But yes, my friend Stephanie, I'm helping her out. She has just come out of the indoctrination of the church, which has been very hard for people. I understand that faith and religion is something that's very personal to people, and we start to learn these things about them. It might not be what we thought it was. It can be a very hard and lonely place to be. And so Stephanie, over at Spiritual Perspectives of Our Great Awakening, that's her channel name, is starting a support group for people who are coming out of, it doesn't have to be the church. It can be any religious doctrine. It can be any type of organization where you felt like you were, we'll just say, mistreated in certain ways. There's 4 different groups. She's starting a women's group, a men's group, in case there's any sexual, you know, that needs to just be kept within certain genders. And then a group deprogramming for both genders. And then she's also going to be having a youth group for kids under 18, which she's still working on finalizing the liability around that. And I believe the email address is Q17 Great Awakening. You know what? Let me text you.
Message it to me later, because I'll put this up tomorrow, ladies. I don't know when yours will go up, but if you message both of us later, Brice, then I will make sure that Stephanie's in. Because when I heard Stephanie and Brice, and if you look at Brice's channel, Esoteric Atlanta, you did a video about it at the weekend, and I heard it, and I was so touched when I heard it, because I thought it was so beautiful what you were both doing.
And we've had some people contact us coming out of that extreme left. They're just coming out of it, and they contacted Stephanie asking if they were welcome, and Stephanie was like, absolutely, we're no judgment here. We're here just to, and I'll send you the email address, because we have a separate email for it, just for her to keep it organized. We are looking for people who speak different languages, because we don't speak anything but English, so Spanish, French, anything where you would want to potentially head up a group of only a specific language. Stephanie would be the person to contact for that. And if it gets bigger, we're going to need a lot of other volunteers as well, especially all over the world, since we're all in different time zones, to help us come together as humanity. We're not therapists, we can't give medical advice, but we're just coming together as friends on this path together.
And Medyhne, you do a Zoom for Australia, don't you?
You reminded me, Brice. Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned. I'm sort of in a similar way I've got a group on Zoom on Tuesday nights in Australia, and we work on soul healing for Australia and New Zealand. And we've done some wonderful energetic techniques to shift the paradigm. And actually this week we have a wonderful woman speaking who has stood up against this and the flying Australian service. I won't say the name. And she's been a real warrior woman. So she's coming to share her story, and we're doing some energetic shifting and tapping into the divine feminine empowerment of Kali, you know, the goddess Kali.
Oh yes.
Who doesn't muck around.
Yes. Yeah, you don't want to mess with Kali. That is
No. And so, there is actually a time now to stop being compliant and stop being complacent, and really tapping into that fierce energy that the feminine energy can also embody. It's not just about that gentle nurturing, but we have a power in that fierceness, which is embodied by Goddess Kali. So that's what we're talking about this week. And every week we do different energetic work. So, yeah.
The Mother Mary was Kali as well.
Oh,
yeah, to the line of Kali, the mother, which I know a lot of people are. This is why I get threats. No, but yeah, that's fantastic, and Kali is definitely what's needed.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I'm right in there. So I will make sure that all the details are below the video. So everyone always says I can't find the links. Just below every video, there's a little section where you can press the read more, and all the links will be there. Thank you so much, ladies. That's been such a joy. I hope it's triggered some areas for thought for anyone that's been kind enough to listen to this. So thank you so much to all of our viewers on all of our channels for taking the time to support us and be there on this journey with us, because it means an awful lot for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Speak soon.
Thank you.